Hi guys, my name is Bailey Smith and I am from Columbia, Maryland, and I am the social media director for Let's Talk About It.
Hello, everyone. My name is Jordana Spalina, and I'm from Montgomery County, Maryland, and I serve as the exclusive officer for the Let's Talk About It crew. And we are so excited to bring in the first Let's Talk About It segment as the co-host of Let's Talk Activism. And we have the privilege of presenting this open platform of conversations towards the fight for change. As a disclosure, with this being a segment off of the Let's Talk About It brand, there are shortened these are shortened conversations of important topics, and we are required to compress them into the time frame that we have, but we still want it to be as strong as possible. Yeah.
So today's discussion will be on the mistreatment of a Black woman. And for the first compressed yet in-depth conversation, we have a very special guest. Bruce Wilson is a native of the South Side of Chicago, Illinois, a proud product of the Chicago public school system, and a strong advocate for accessible and high-quality public education. Bruce studies political science and economics at Hampton University, while also being recognized as a presidential scholar by Hampton University and an endowed scholar by the National Hampton Alumni Association. Bruce is an aspiring attorney and business leader and is focused on creating opportunities through the intersections of business, law, policy, and nonprofit management to assist in the socioeconomic mobility of underserved communities. Bruce has been published in the policy space for his work with the Center for Law and Social Policy, is currently working on an academic piece that highlights economic inequality and is scheduled to be published in the upcoming months, and has delivered numerous public speeches, including presenting at a TEDx conference. Bruce's work has noted him as an upcoming thought leader on the political and economic landscape. Bruce is a member of the Gamma Iota chapter of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated and a scholar with the Institute for Responsible Citizenship and a White House HBCU Competitiveness Citizenship scholar by the U.S. Department of Education. Bruce serves as a member of Hampton University's Board of Trustees. Welcome, Bruce.
Okay.
Thank you for that long introduction. That was cool. Glad to be here. Glad that you guys are really doing this and that you invited me to give, the Black male perspective on this topic.
Of course. You're making us feel like we haven't, done nothing. We love everything that you're doing, and obviously we're very proud of you. And with that being said, we can get into the questions. I think Bailey got the first one.
Absolutely. So I feel like the first question that we should start off with is, when you hear the term, the mistreatment of a Black woman, what comes to mind?
Well, the first thing that comes to mind, I think, is what should be obvious to everyone is, I immediately think of slavery and how Black women were taken from their homes, brought to North America, brought to, the Caribbeans and wherewithal, and were stripped of their rights, privileges, how they were raped and beaten, and how their children were taken from them, how their significant others were killed. That's what I immediately think about. But more, I guess, not more recently, but I guess a more recent depiction of what I think about when I think of the, mistreatment of Black women, I actually think of the women's suffrage movement. And I specifically think about Susan B. Anthony and Elizabeth Stanton. And I think about how during that time, the 19th century, how you had the leaders of the women's suffrage movement, I guess, would quote unquote be the feminist movement in today's context, were white. They were debuted as who were leading the movement. And they were very vocal, verbose, and abstract in what they called equality for women. However, they were also very much and openly recorded of being prejudiced and racist and not speaking for Black women and not inviting Black women to the table and basically being divisive and asking for women's suffrage and women's equalities, women's rights, however, not inviting Black women or thinking of them at all. I think of how, just in today, like the current state that we're living in, we treat Black women really as second class citizens, as, you know, people that are lesser than or don't deserve. Um, that's what I think about. And obviously, more recently, which is actually recent, I think about, you know, the current Black Lives Matter movement. And I think about how Black women are actually, you know, the bearers and the leaders of the Black Lives Matter movement. However, Black men are who are regarded as almost the trophies. More so, I really feel, I tell people all the time, this is like a terrible joke, and I guess it's like hysterically like bad, but you could really put a M in between, you know, the BLM of Black Lives Matter, and it could be Black Male Lives Matter, or really it could be CM, or Black Cis Male Lives Matter. And then I think about, you know, Breonna Taylor. And I don't ever like to say, because I, you know, have utmost respect for the people who are in the justice system, who are fighting for us. And I don't want to say that they aren't fighting for Black women as hard as they are fighting for Black men. But whatever the case may be, it's definitely much harder to receive justice for Black women of all kinds. It's just the fact of the matter. And even out in regards to what's not happening in the legal system, just the media portrayal. I tweeted something the other day. I said the movement has turned into a meme, and I was really referring to how, you know, Breonna Taylor's name is now being used as like a stunt that people like are using to, you know, bring traction to their page. It's like, it's kind of like bewildering and almost like sick to like a point of me, because it's like, to some regard, some people are doing it like in good faith, and they're leading us to like resources that can help. But some of the stuff is literally just a meme. And it's like, I'll go through Instagram stories, and it's like something about Breonna Taylor, and then it's a TikTok of someone dancing. And I'm just like, okay, this is starting to get weird. But that's what I immediately think about. And obviously, there is a clear paradigm within American history of the mistreatment of Black women. So what we're seeing now like isn't new, but that's what I immediately think of. And I'm obviously missing like so much more within all of that, because that's the culture that we live in. It's almost like a part of the DNA of America, like along with, I mean, it is, because I tell people all the time, you can't separate racism from America, and neither can you separate misogyny or patriarchy. So the mistreatment of Black women is almost inevitable.
No, I think it's like, oh, sorry.
Go ahead, Taylor.
I think it's really refreshing to hear, like, from, because it's obviously, me and you already could say, like, you know, this is how, because we're Black women, it's so much easier to like just break down in all different ways what we think when we hear that. But it's really refreshing and interesting to hear, like, from a male perspective of the breakdown and the historical aspect of how Black women are mistreated. Recently,
and also, you know, in terms of like the women's suffrage march, and it being for us as women, and it being, you know, a standard for all women, but in reality it wasn't, because they wanted it to still to be divided and to put Black women in a box, and just like we're not, you know, a part of the society that we're supposed to be a part of. And I'm really glad that you brought that up, and everything else that you said. And everything that you said, do you feel your role as a Black man is, what do you think your role is as a Black man to protect a Black woman? Because, you know.
That's a really good question, and something that I think everyone needs to think of, every Black man, but everyone really needs to think about, what is the role? I think there are multiple roles, and I try to think about every problem that exists like within our society from like a holistic standpoint. So you have to attack problems like this from like every angle. So, you know, one role, being a Black man with privilege, is that I have to use some of the platforms that I have, some of the opportunities, some of the privileges that I have, and open them up for Black women. I have to, I mean, first, what every Black man needs to do is they have to listen and believe. Listen to Black women and believe what they're saying. You know, because there's so much like gaslighting and just like people ignoring what's going on. So that's the first step. I think the next step after that is to stop harassing Black women. You know, stop catcalling to people on the street. Yeah, listening and believing. Stop catcalling when people are walking on the street. Stop asking Black women to smile because it's not for anyone besides the person who's asking. I think that's just like a selfish intent. But like I said, it's people because you are very much tone deaf if you're a Black man and you don't realize the privilege that you do have being a man. And so taking that privilege and opening up doors and making sure, you know, me personally, making sure I'm not taking up too much space. It requires a lot of introspection to realize the systems that exist. We can talk about, you know, respectability politics, and we can talk about, you know, capitalism and patriarchy. And sometimes I will be reflective and I find myself, unfortunately, upholding some of the same systems that, you know, push down and oppress Black women. And so it requires a lot of thought and reflection to make sure that we as Black men are not upholding those systems that are tearing down Black women or not even acknowledging their existence. Because that's probably that's probably something that everyone can do, is just think about what you're doing and where your place is, where you fall on that scale, and figure out what you can do within yourself. I think on a larger scale, people that are in these positions that are, you know, CEOs, CFOs, founders of, you know, major firms, law firms, hedge funds, VCs, they have to go out and intentionally invest their time, their money, their social capital, like into Black women. There has to be more programs that are catered for Black women, more scholarship opportunities. I'm forgetting the name, but Robert Smith, one of Robert Smith's good friends, Frank, who worked at Goldman Sachs with Robert Smith, who donated or paid off some of the fees for the, you know, the 50 highest performing women at Spelman this year. Like, acts like that have to be normalized and they have to be repetitive and habitual, because, you know, there's enough for everyone to like be successful, to thrive. But I think that is what Black men, what I need to do in general, is just making sure that I'm realizing the opportunities that I have, and in every way possible, I'm opening those up for Black women, making sure I'm not, you know, only respecting certain Black women, people who are, you know, seen as like politically respectable, or, you know, even down to like the LGBTQ community, like opening up all of those spaces and not just looking at Black women that, you know, people find attractive and respecting those. It has to be everyone that we're opening doors for. So that's the most important thing, I really think. It's the most immediate thing that we can do. But there also has to be a policy and systemic change within that all.
And it starts in our community, because I think it's easy to point fingers outside of our community or say, like, you know, which we are, you know, being mistreated by other races, this and that. But it also, there needs to be a conversation and accountability within our community. And I think sometimes we get so stuck on the outside, we lack that. And I think it starts with accountability, and then it starts with a conversation, and it starts with, you know, platforms such as ours. If not, you know, this might not be as big, but, you know, people that have that platform to be able to speak on it, but also put action to their words.
Exactly. And if I can touch on what you just said, like, no matter how big or small the platform, I like, one thing that I pride myself on is like, as long as you can affect one person, or just one person listens to this and they change like their actions or beliefs, that means like we've done enough. And like, that's a small win, and it's going to be the combination and the compounding effect of all of those small wins that's going to do it. And like you said, like holding ourselves accountable, like within our own community. I mean, you know, Black families in general, I would say, are, you know, pragmatic and have a lot of conservative beliefs just because of the Black church.
Yeah.
And we have to stop with, you know, the hyper sexualization of Black women. Stop, you know, adultifying Black women at such an early age. We have to respect the choices that we make.
I'm really glad you pointed out the making sure that you're protecting the women that you don't maybe not find attractive, even the LGBTQ community, because I think it's important that, I mean, this goes for men and women, that we protect everyone, even people we don't know.
I think just in general that we have to be more selective in who we regard as influencers and who we listen to.
That's a really good statement you just said.
You know, I tell people all the time, people only have as much power as we give them. You know, stop listening to 50 Cent and T.I. giving advice on how to treat Black women. Okay, like, you know, they are not the people that we should be going to and listening to in regards to like equality. Just because some of the comments are just like so outrageous.
Right.
And so, to some people that's like very minute, but I'm very big on like consumption and like what we take in. And I could think it all like plays a role into how we interact with people. And it's like when you listen to dialogues, you know, with like Snoop Dogg and Lil Wayne, 50 Cent, T.I., and how they themselves are like trash talking like Black women openly, like on their social media, on interviews, unconsciously, like we're
women
taking
who they employ too.
Yeah. I mean, that's a good point that you made right there, speaking of employment. But I'll first answer your everyday question. And I think I'll refer back to what I even mentioned before. Like, I have a lot of, you know, friends who are Black women. And so the thing that I do the most and I like pride myself on is that I'm always going to answer the phone. Like if I ever get a text or a call like from them, because I understand the dangers that exist for Black women. And so I treat every conversation like an emergency. I always have a sense of urgency when I'm talking to them. And even if sometimes like within the like dialogue or conversations, I don't necessarily agree what we're talking about, I always put respect on it and I listen to it because I understand that my experiences are completely different from theirs. You know, like us three on this call, like you two live in a completely different world than I, just because of your gender. And so that's what I think people have to do on a day to day, you know. And it's a thin line because, you know, it's the whole like Black girl magic, like woman empowerment. And I know a lot of Black men sometimes don't know where to fall because also and sometimes in the back of people's mind, this is something that this narrative needs to completely change, is the whole strong Black woman. Yes, you know, Black women are strong, but the narrative of the strong Black woman has to fade away. We really have to put it to rest because that adds to so much of the implicit bias that exists at every level. I mean, I'm actually thinking about the healthcare system right now, and the implicit bias that exists there. You know, you have professionals and you have judges that aren't listening or taking the concerns of Black women seriously. So that has to change. We just have to put that whole thing to rest and like open ourselves up and be very open and receptive to what Black women are telling us. Because like you guys have been telling us this entire time, like even before, you know, the women's suffrage movement that I referred to, like this isn't a conversation that has been brought up. It may be a conversation that is just now being acknowledged and that people are maybe just now, you know, opening their eyes and like listening to. But people have to be receptive to everything that Black women are saying because you guys are giving us the answers. It's just whether or not are people responding? Are they actually reacting to it? And I was just reading something the other day and, you know, people, I can't speak about a specific group of people generally, for some reason, they take intent and they place intent over action. And it's like, that's very backwards and reverse and just confusing. It's like your intention can be whatever. And you can, you know, genuinely call yourself a feminist, a womanist, someone who is supporting Black women. But if your actions are not doing so, it's really not helping anything.
Yeah. It's all about what happens behind closed doors. And
literally,
if you're like tweeting whatever, and then you're cussing out your sister just to go because she's in the bathroom longer. What's the point of what you just put out there? So
Yeah.
And also, some people just like to, put this image of themselves out there. I know, like, especially when the whole Black Lives Matter was a trending topic and people were, consistent with their posts and everything. Especially around that time, a lot of people felt forced in a way to contribute or do certain things because they didn't want to not be in the trend.
Exactly.
And it really just took away from the movement, because when it wasn't a trending topic anymore, then where is the people? And where are they with that energy and feel that they had towards that topic? And it's like that's when I hear the term, putting action into your own words, those are the kind of things that I think about, because now you're just doing and saying things because you want to look a certain way, or you want your image to stay content, and that upsets me.
That's definitely something that is super relevant, and I see it on every level, like down to like where we are to the White House. There is a form of just like performative politics that exists.
Yeah.
People are just performing. It's showmanship that we're seeing. And I just read a book the other day. The name is slipping from my mind. It's either called Grandstanding or Grandstanders. And ever since I've read it, I told people to beware of grandstanders. And it's those people who engage in these performative acts because they themselves just do not want to be out the loop, or they want to put their morality into a place where they will be acknowledged for something. But like, you're being acknowledged for like nothing that you've done. And those are the people that like we really have to be like aware of and like almost scared of, because they will just push this narrative that they're doing this and they're doing this, but it's really just so they themselves can be comfortable. That's it. And so like what you said is like spot on. Like I really feel like you're like in my head actually, because I literally just wrote something about that maybe like 2 days ago, about those people who just place their morality on a higher ground. And it's almost twisted because they do it while they're pushing down other people and saying like, if you aren't doing this, then you're wrong. But
then
you can't judge people by what we see, just like from media.
And you also don't see that energy. Sorry, go ahead, Billy.
No, it's fine. I was just gonna say it's hard, and it kind of like creates like blurred lines at the same time, because if you think about it, if we don't have those people too, our point might not come across as strong, because the more the people, the louder the point comes across. So it's like at the same time, it's like you want anyone that can hear you to kind of be openly receptive, but to a certain point, it becomes dangerous, because now you don't know who you have in your corner and who's
you don't know who your allies are, and it becomes dangerous. But I also like have that contradiction sometimes, because like with the whole like Breonna Taylor like meme that's like happening with the name, it's like, is this really bringing attention to anything, or is it just crowding up like noise? So what's really happening? But
and I'm really glad that you brought that up again, because I do remember you mentioning that earlier. But nationally, we saw the treatment of the Breonna Taylor case. We saw how serious it was taken, especially comparing it to George Floyd's, and how that was the actions that were taken was a lot sooner. And Breonna Taylor, her case is still open. One person got fired, but it's still nothing that concrete that happened towards her case. And with that being said, in your eyes, do you think Black women, protect, respect, and defend Black men more than Black men do for Black women?
Definitely so. I would, be ignorant to disagree. That's for sure. I try not to ever like compare the two, but the fact of the matter, it's so, and it's because Black men benefit from the systems that oppress women, and I was talking to one of my friends. He's at UNC Chapel Hill, Keenan Flagger Business School, and he was telling me that, like, within the business school, it's almost crazy. Like, one, he says there's barely any black people, but on top of there being any black people, there's almost more black people than there are women. And I'm like, that's very interesting that, like, that construct still exists. And I think a very relevant fact is, black women, within the next couple of decades are going to hold the most, like, MDs, PhDs out of all groups, right? They're going to be the most educated. Black women are already the most educated.
It's the highest going rate, right?
Yes, exactly. It's going at the highest potential. And it's interesting to note that the black women are the most educated. However, they still have the highest debt to income ratio.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the strongest facts. It's like, we push the narrative of, work hard, get a good education, do what you have to do to, like, get out of the system. But it actually puts you back into a system, because now it's like you have all of these degrees and merits, and, like, we all recognize and we know that black women are the smartest people on the planet.
Yeah.
But we're still paying them the least amount.
Yeah.
We still aren't appointing them to, any board of directors, any board of trustees. The outside of, of what being the, chair of diversity and inclusion, like, how many black vice presidents or CFOs or CEOs have we really seen be appointed to these places outside of, and that's just this immediate time that we're thinking about. I think that is a statistic that is, like, just crazy and, like, senile, really, because, like, we have acknowledged that they are the, most qualified, black women are the most qualified and most fitting to lead, but we have not given them the chance. And I even think about, Stacey Abrams and Kamala Harris, who are, obviously, the sharpest people in their competitions, but because of racism and sexism, we just disregarded all of their qualifications. That's just wrong.
Yeah.
No. Yeah. And I just want to, point out that in no shape or form was that question, trying to bash our black men, men, but it's definitely, sometimes conversation can't always be comfortable. We have to be comfortable with being uncomfortable. And I think, we just wanted to make sure that we hit every point of, our race. And we didn't do that fully, but we wanted to hit some of the points that are relevant in our community in terms of our black men and women.
But no, that's definitely a good question. The question that people, black men, have to ask themselves, like, am I protecting black women as much as black women are protecting me? And if they answered honestly, I think majority of black men would agree that they are not, because of the systems that exist. And it's a crazy, contradiction and, food for thought that black men have to deal with, because, we too, like, are black. Some of the struggles we have, like, are synonymous and are the same, and there's, an intersection between them. But black men have to acknowledge that they, aren't being sexually harassed at these rates. They aren't being hypersexualized. They, aren't being fired because of their hair, or not getting hired for jobs because of their names. That's something that, like, people have to address.
Yeah. And I think going back to what you said before on the following question and this one, it's just interesting because I guess lots of things when it comes to certain cases or just certain topics, people pick and choose what they want to support and what they don't, or they overlook it. I just sent Yordi, it was another pregnant woman who passed away. It was a makeup artist. I think she was in the UK, from the UK. And she passed away, her and her unborn child. And this was the second one I've heard of, like, on a national from a national platform in like 2 weeks. And I've seen it, like, on a whole bunch of stories. I don't remember her name because I personally hadn't heard of her or followed her before, but I've seen it on, like, a whole bunch of stories on my Instagram, on Twitter, but it was always, like, women. Like, I don't think I've seen one man repost. I'm not that, of course, I didn't hear about it before either, but I mean, let's be honest, I'm sure some men have seen that and just not choosing to look into it further, but like, you hear these stories of how their husbands are just in pain and trying to get people to trying to find answers, because I mean, it's not a coincidence, but it just comes back to choosing your allies and making sure that people can stand by you even if they don't know you.
Yeah.
To hone in. Oh, what were you saying? Sorry.
No, I was gonna say that, and that's just the cases that we know nationally where, Black women have lost their lives of some unnatural or, some, cases that we just don't know full details of. It's not the first time, but I can't imagine the ones that aren't nationally public.
Exactly.
The ones that we don't know about, and that could go to both our Black men and women. We don't know what about the cases that aren't, that didn't get filmed by just a random person.
I mean, they tried not to report Breonna Taylor's case, so
exactly, and that was really, it became a big thing because it went national, and what, after 3 months after her death.
Yeah.
The George
Floyd of, finalizing his case than she ever, is. At least right now, her case is becoming cold case, and that to me is what, just throws me off.
Indeed.
And that's all after it hit social media, because originally it happened and no one knew. We are really, really grateful that you had this conversation with us today. And all of your points were so amazing. And hopefully you can come back sometime and we can touch on it again or another topic.
Yes, because you made this very difficult for us, because I think you had good points that we had to, come back, with what we had to say on. And this is supposed to be a 20-minute thing, and now we're going to have to find a way to put an hour to a 20 to 30.
Have we been that long? Yeah, we were.
Yes, so we've really been just talking. But
you can ask anybody. We usually come back with like another point to add, and we're over here like, well, dang, yeah. Mm-hmm.
We got a lot to say.
No, yeah, I'm just glad you guys are doing this. This is really good. Like, I love the entire platform. Like, I hope you guys continue, stay consistent with it. Like, course. This is something that people need to hear, dialogues like this from Black people. Like, it has to be for us, by us, for sure.
And it's not, it's more so positive, and I think that's why I love, just doing this with Bailey, because at the end of the day, like, this isn't bashing. This is more so, creating this platform so we can touch on that uncomfortable conversation without being so negative. And it can be, it could be with other races. It could be all of that. But it's more so trying to see the different sides of how we think and not, But
it's refreshing that we got to have it with hopefully we have more members of Hampton, students at Hampton, because since we aren't going back in the fall, we have these conversations all the time in class. I mean, this is just normal. We'll be with professor whatever, and this is just something that comes in before we do introductions. So we're going to have to get used to that new normal. But I think it's important that we keep these day-to-day conversations in our lives, no matter how long they are.
Most definitely.
And we just want to thank you for seeing the vision and for being willing. And I could tell you this millions of times, but your willingness is really beautiful to see. And we have the privilege of having you and somebody that, actually has stuff on them. And you making me want to work harder. And we're going to work harder because of what you do. And we just want to encourage you to keep going with everything that you're doing as well. And, you can come back here anytime. We're an email away.
No, I really appreciate
and a text
that.
Away.
For sure. And I'll just leave y'all with this. Like, the privilege is really mine. And no matter, what the case may be, you all can reach out to me for anything. Any way you think that I can help you, in any way. If you're in Chicago, DC, New York, those are my 3 main areas. Anything you need. Feel free to contact me. Even in regards to anything at Hampton, you got problems with teachers, scholarship problems, financial aid, like let me know for sure. Like I want to make sure I'm accessible for everyone, but specifically you two, for sure.
Thank you. That means a lot to us, and we're gonna hold you to
Thank
that.
you.
You might
For
hear from
sure.
us.
Definitely let me
But
know.
thank you to everyone for listening. We really appreciate it. And yeah, you already hear anything else?
Yeah, Bailey and I are excited to start this, and we thank you again, Bruce, for coming and just being with us. And stay tuned, everybody. This is a new platform, and I think we're gonna keep this going for a while. So, just thank you for watching and just being interactive and all of that. So, thank you so much. And yeah, this concludes our first episode.
Yay.
Awesome.